it is time for Dave Simon. What's up, Dave?
Yeah. Huge week in MMA this week, Matthew.
Why is it a huge week in MMA this week, Dave? Tell us.
You don't know? You're not aware?
No.
Well, that's why I'm here. I'm here to tell you.
Well,
Wednesday night,
Okay.
UFC Fight Night 27
Yes.
on Fox Sports 1 out in the States. It'll be on a channel here in Canada as well.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday night, UFC 164 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Benson, Henderson, Anthony Pettis, the UFC Lightweight Championship on the line. So a 3-day span with 2 events, and it'll actually be a 7-day span with 3 events starting this Wednesday night, the Fight Night 27, Saturday night UFC 164, and then the following Wednesday, September 4th, will be UFC Fight Night 28.
So that's 8 days. That's 8 days, Dave. 8 days. Come on.
Well, Wednesday to Wednesday. Isn't that 7 days? No, that's
No,
8.
it's actually 8 days.
Oh, man.
Sorry, man.
Whatever. You guys nitpicking with the days.
I think you should beat him right now.
Who cares?
Now, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, is that prime MMA territory? You don't normally think of that city as...
They like fighting everywhere, Matthew. They like it everywhere. And it just so happens that Milwaukee's own Anthony Pettis is going to be in the main event. He wasn't even supposed to be in this main event.
Really?
It was supposed to be Nova Scotian fighter TJ Grant getting his title
Who you're
shot.
high on. You're hugely high on this guy, yeah.
Of course.
What happened, Dave? Tell us.
TJ suffered a concussion in training, so Anthony Pettis instead steps in to fight Benson Henderson. A lot of people very excited about this matchup, though, because Pettis is the last man to hold a victory over Benson Henderson, actually beat him in a 5-round decision back in 2010 at the final WEC show, taking that WEC lightweight title from Benson. And, we're going to have to wait and see 6 days from now. Did I get that right? 6 days from now, Saturday night?
That is, no.
Yes.
7 days.
What? Oh, my God. Saturday, August 31st, we'll see if Pettis can beat Benson again.
Now, Dave, you mentioned TJ Grant and the concussion in training. Talk to us about that because, again, this is a guy that is, just on the rise, one of the real superstars potentially in the MMA, especially in Canada, to finally have, another big guy other than GSP to maybe hang your hat on moving forward. And how serious this concussion is. Are the UFC organizers really worried about it? And really, it's just another indication of how hard these guys train.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that happens. He was actually doing jiu-jitsu training, and he just bumped his head and suffered a concussion. It's not a serious concussion, but he decided, look, it's not safe for him to train, and he doesn't want to go into the biggest fight of his life, not 100% prepared. So it's not a serious injury, but it is a setback for TJ Grant, who on a 5-fight win streak now, doing very well in the UFC, knocking people out, just knocked out Gray Maynard in his last fight. TJ was the underdog in that one, and he finished Gray within the first round. So, TJ Grant is somebody that you can look at as being a next great hope in Canadian mixed martial arts, perhaps another champion at 155 pounds. But we're going to have to wait until he comes back. And again, he's not guaranteed a title shot when he does come back. He may have to fight one more time before getting a title shot. But also he may face the winner of Pettis Henderson. Nothing is really set in stone for TJ Grant yet, so it's kind of a wait-and-see deal for TJ.
All right, so what else is on this card this coming Wednesday?
Oh, we've got a great card Wednesday night. You got Carlos Condit and Martin Kampmann in the main event. This is a rematch from April of 2009. Condit was in his first fight in the UFC. He lost a split decision to Martin Kampmann. He's currently the favorite going into this one. Both guys coming off losses to Johnny Hendricks. Condit had a great fight with Johnny Hendricks here in March in Montreal at the Bell Center, losing to him by decision. And Kampmann also fought Hendricks at the Bell Center in his last fight. It was in November of 2012, where he suffered a first-round knockout. So
why has it been so long for him to get back in the ring?
Well, it's a little bit different. When you lose a fight by decision, you're not put unconscious. You don't suffer that concussion. When you get knocked out, you want to take some time off.
Yeah.
I always question guys coming back within 3 or 4 months from a knockout loss. I think it's very risky. I think 6 months to a year after you get knocked out is probably prudent, but a lot of guys, when they get knocked out, they want to rush right back into that octagon to try and avenge the loss. So it's very tricky right now in MMA. How long do you wait after you get knocked out? Martin Kampmann choosing to wait, I guess about 9 months between fights, which I think is safe for him, and it's probably the smartest move for him, as it was not the first time he'd been knocked out. The fourth knockout loss of his career. So definitely better safe than sorry. You're 31 years old. You want to be safe, and you're fighting a guy in Carlos Condit who's got 13 of his 28 victories by knockout. A very dangerous fight and a very good fight here at welterweight. Just great fights all week long. You've got Condit and Kampmann fighting on Wednesday night. Co-main event there, you've got Donald Cerrone, Rafael Dos Anjos. We talked about UFC 164 on Saturday. Josh Barnett, his long-anticipated return to the UFC. He'll fight Frank Mir at heavyweight. Just great fights.
And that's a name that's been around a while. I mean, that's a guy that's a bit of a draw. Well, who do you have winning in that one?
Who's a bit of a draw to you? Who is the name? Frank Mir or Josh Barnett?
Well, I know that name. Mir has been around a while.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he had those 2 wars with Brock Lesnar, right? He's a former UFC heavyweight champion. So is Josh Barnett. Right now, I think I'm going to go with Josh Barnett. I haven't done all the research on this fight, but I'm leaning towards Josh Barnett. I think that the power that he's got in his hands and his grappling ability will be enough to beat Frank Mir. But Mir's been training over with Greg Jackson, training with Travis Brown, who just picked up a win over Alistair Overeem last week. And, Mir's a guy who's ever improving. I think it's going to be a tough fight for both guys, but I'm leaning towards Josh Barnett winning right now.
Game Points here on TSN 690. We're talking some MMA with Dave Simon of Ringside Report Radio. Elsewhere, Dave, what are some of the other news and notes that are on top of mind for you?
I mean, it's just basically fights right now. Everybody's looking at the fights and waiting to see what shakes out. We had Chael Sonnen and Wanderlei Silva. That was really the big news last week. They're going back and forth. All sorts of crazy stuff being said between those guys. Wanderlei put out a YouTube video saying he was going to hurt Chael, and he called him a butt face, and he called him all sorts of strange things. And Chael called out Wanderlei, of course, after his fight. Dana White saying Wanderlei wasn't satisfied with the contract or where they wanted to fight. He said he wanted points on a pay-per-view, so he guesses the fight isn't going to happen. So a lot of weird stuff happening with Chael and Wanderlei, and I'm starting to think the fight won't happen. It's not really a fight I want to see.
They're gonna, it'll happen, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't know. If Wanderlei keeps making all these demands, I think that they'll probably move on. Well, Vitor Belfort kept making demands, kept turning down fights, and
look where he is.
They gave him a good fight, as it was announced this week that Vitor will be fighting Dan Henderson in his next bout. So that'll be a really good one. A rematch from back in the Pride days.
Now, where are we on the female matches upcoming? What's happening on that side? Of course, UFC. It's not been a while that they've had women fighters, or rather, what I mean to say is it hasn't been long since they introduced women fighters. Right? It's still kind of recent. Yeah.
February of this year.
So, what's the next big one, and how's that division? How are the women starting to get pushed here a little bit?
See, unfortunately, a big fight that we were going to have this Wednesday night was going to be Sarah Kaufman versus Sarah McMahon. And that was going to be a really big fight in the bantamweight division to really determine perhaps the next number one contender for Ronda Rousey or Miesha Tate. Sarah McMahon had to pull out of the fight. The UFC was trying desperately to find an opponent up until last week for Sarah Kaufman, but they just couldn't find one. So now Sarah, who is another Canadian fighter, another great Canadian hope for a championship in the UFC, Sarah Kaufman's going to have to wait. The word now is that she'll be fighting a newcomer, former Bellator contender Jessica Ai in October at UFC 166, which should be a good fight there between those two. But right now it's kind of, everybody in the women's division is waiting for December 28th, which is when Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate will fight. The championship will be determined then. And we'll see where we go from there. I think that 2014 is going to be a huge year in women's MMA. A lot of things will happen.
Do you think that they're actually going to build it up and it will be a big year?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that just seeing The Ultimate Fighter with women on the cast, women coaching, will be huge for women's mixed martial arts. And that's going to kick off in September. Ronda Rousey coaching opposite Miesha Tate. And you're going to like this. There's going to be a lot of drama between these two women. They do not like each other. One of the most heated rivalries in the history of mixed martial arts, Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey. They legitimately don't like each other. Ronda seems to just hate Miesha Tate. It's pretty crazy. And everybody in MMA looking forward to
so you don't think
the
it's
next
just
season
an act?
of The Ultimate
you don't
Fighter.
Think it's, posturing?
No. It's all legit. It's definitely legit. Ronda Rousey, she does not like Miesha. They fought before. they talk trash to each other, and once again, they are not happy with each other, and we're going to see it on The Ultimate Fighter. It's not just for the cameras. They really don't like each other, and I'm excited to see The Ultimate Fighter, to see how all that plays out, and to see all the female talent that's going to be on the season of The Ultimate Fighter. So I think definitely women's MMA made big strides in 2013, getting into the UFC and all that, but 2014, 2015 going to be even bigger. It's going to continue to grow, just as MMA continues to grow and get bigger and bigger. I mean, look, we're talking about 3 UFC shows in an 8-day span. That is not something we saw 2-3 years ago. You know, UFC at one point was showing, maybe a show a month, and now they're having like 4 or 5 events only in the month of August. So big things going on in the UFC, women's MMA. It just continues to grow.
Are they still looking at Ronda Rousey as the thing in UFC? It just seems we had a conversation a few months ago, and she's on the cover of this, and it's going to be something special. Now the UFC has women fighting. Has she lost a bit of that luster just because of not getting the quality opponents or enough opponents, or are we still? Is she still going to be a big draw?
Yeah, Ronda Rousey's still a big draw. Is going to be an even bigger draw. She just got cast to have a major role in the new Expendables movie with Sylvester Stallone. So she's big time. She's getting a lot of offers to be in all sorts of different movies. Like I said, she's going to be on The Ultimate Fighter. The only drawback, I think, for Ronda Rousey has been the fact that she hasn't fought in several months. She fought in February. She looked very impressive, but we haven't seen her fight, and she won't be fighting until December 28th. So it's a little bit of a wait in between fights for Ronda Rousey, but definitely she's the marquee name in that women's division and one of the biggest names in the sport. I mean, you're not seeing any other champion in the UFC being cast in the Expendables. Ronda Rousey she's big time.
Randy Couture was in the Expendables,
yeah, but not while he was still a UFC champion.
Right. No, that's fair. What's coming up Wednesday, Dave?
Wednesday night, we're going to do the post-show for UFC Fight Night 27. As it goes down Wednesday night, the fights end at 11, and then we come on live 11 p.m. on TSN 690 to break down all the fights and start getting you ready for UFC 164. It's fight week aplenty here, and we're going to recap all the action. Should be some excellent fights on Wednesday night.
And what do you got coming up tonight on Wrestling Uncensored after Red Sox Dodgers?
Yeah, well, we're 1 week removed now from WWE SummerSlam, and the fallout continues. Daniel Bryan having some excellent performances on Raw and SmackDown this week, and now just 3 weeks away from WWE Night of Champions. D-Bry, Randy Orton for the WWE title. The rematch goes down at Night of Champions in 3 weeks' time in Detroit, Michigan, so we'll start breaking that down. So much pro wrestling to get to tonight. It's an exciting time in MMA and pro wrestling.